Hi everyone and welcome to a new video on the CBI channel. In this tutorial series we're developing a login/authentication app using Python, Django in our backend and React.js in the front end. In this video the topic is going to be doing password resets, and in this particular video we're going to focus on doing that inside of our Django backend. Now you can see right here that we've already done a lot of videos in this series. Some of them focused on the setup, others on registering users, and also on logging in and protecting our APIs. It would be great if you go back and watch those, but you don't actually need these to follow along with this video. Now in this video, we're going to be using Django Rest Password Reset to enable password resets for our users. And I'm going to start with a very brief explanation of what this process actually looks like. In the end, the user is going to go to our front-end React application and is going to fill in a form with his email address. Then when we send the request with the email address to our backend, we want to send the user an email for restoring their password, which also includes a token with an expiry date, so that within a range of time, the user is able to use that token to reset the password. Now, the user can click on the link in an email, go to our front end and fill in the new password if the email address exists inside of our database. And we are going to send that new password fully encrypted with that token back to our backend for validation. If the user actually exists, the token is still valid and the password passes the requirements, then the password gets updated to the user and the user is redirected to the login page so that he can log into the application again. Now there's one prerequisite for following along with this video, and that is that you need to enable sending emails through Django inside of your application. Now I've already created a video on how you can do this with Gmail in a previous series, so I will put the link to that video in the description and also put it as a card on this video. So make sure you have your email settings completed before you start following along. And you can also see in my project right here that I've added some email settings based on the video I've done before, and also I imported OS on the top right here in our settings.py file so that I'm able to send emails using Django and Gmail. With that prerequisite out of the way, there are 6 main steps that we need to take. The first step is installing Django Rest Password Reset, because that package is going to help us with handling the tokens when we send the emails to the users. And we also need to make a small change to our settings to make sure that that all works. Next, we're going to migrate our models because Django Rest Password Reset has its own tables to handle those tokens, and we need to make sure that those are inside of our applications. And we're also going to add the URLs that Django Rest Password Reset provides with us. And those URLs are actually the endpoints that we can use to reset the password. And I'm going to show you later what that looks like. Once we know exactly where the user needs to send those requests to, we can build an email template that we're going to send to the user. And we're going to be using Be Free to do that. And that helps us to create a nice looking template for our password reset emails. Then we're also going to make a slight change to our settings to make sure that it knows exactly where our templates are. And we're going to create some logic for sending the emails after we have provided a certain command to the endpoints. As the last 2 steps, we're going to add the token and some other variables to our email so that it's actually in there and the user can use it to reset the password. And then we're going to test the whole logic out and make sure that everything works the way that we expect. So the first thing that we need to do is install Django Rest Password Reset, because this package is going to help us with requesting a token and then also verifying and confirming a token and changing the actual password in our Django backend. Now installing this package is very simple. We can simply use pip install Django Rest Password Reset. So I'm going to copy over that statement and we're going to go to our backend code and install that. So inside of our terminal, we first do cd into our backend, so we're in the right folder, and we do venv/scripts/activate to activate our virtual environment. And then we can do python-m and then pip install Django Rest Password Reset. Now inside of the documentation, you can already see the next step that we need to take right here, because we need to add Django Rest Password Reset into our settings.py file, and it needs to be below the REST framework package. So same here, I'm going to copy that over. go back to our code and then to the settings.py file, and in the installed apps section on the top, we are going to put it just on the bottom of this complete string. Now, to make sure that Django Rest Password Reset works correctly, we need to migrate our database, because Django Rest Password Reset will have some separate tables that are going to handle the tokens that we're going to send to our users. And it's a little bit similar to what Nox is doing. It's basically going to store all of the tokens and also have a expiry date in there, so we know exactly when tokens are valid or when they are not. So to make sure that our database is up to date, we can do python manage.py and then do migrate. And you can see that now a few tables have been added to our project called initial, pk migration, allow blank and null fields, and also alter reset password token user agent. And those are going to help us with resetting our passwords. Now, in the documentation, you also see that step, but also the next one that we're going to do, and that is including the URLs for the endpoints. Because as seen here on the top, Django Rest Password Resets will provide us with endpoints for requesting a token, and then also to confirm a token and change the password. So we can actually use those URLs and we don't need to do anything ourselves. So we're going to go to our auth folder and then to the urls.py file right here. And we're going to include the URLs from Django Rest Password Reset. So I'm just going to copy over the path of the previous one from the Nox URLs, and we're going to be changing the URL to API/password_reset like this. And then we can do include and then specify Django_rest_password_reset.urls. And then we can also, after this statement, give them a namespace that is going to be equal to password_reset. And this should be enough to provide us with the URLs for Django Rest Password Reset. Now let's actually check out the results of the two actions that we have just done. So I've just opened our database in a graphical user interface, and if I now go to the table section right here, you can see that we have a new table called Django Rest Password Reset_reset password token. And if we take a look at the structure of the table, you can see that we have fields for created at, so when the new token has been generated for the user, we have a key, an IP address, a user ID, an ID, and a user agent. And this table is going to help us to handle the tokens that we are going to be sending the user, that the user can use to reset the passwords. Now let's also check out the URLs that they have been providing us with. So to do that, we can first start our server by doing python manage.py run server. And when we end up in our browser, we will not see the link inside of our API root, because that only happens with view sets. But if we go to /API/password_reset, we should go to the page where users can request the new password. And you can already see right here that we have a page that will expect the users to provide an email address, and based on that, we will get a response. So what will happen in the future is that in the front end, we are going to create a form that expects the input of the email, and then we're going to send that request of the email to this URL right here, which is then going to provide us with an email with all of the information to send the password reset. And we can already see what happens if we fill in an email address and then do a post request. Inside of our database, you can see that we have an existing user called email@email.com. So I'm going to copy over that one because I know this one is actually inside of the database. And I'm going to put it into the email field that we have for the request. And if I now post this, you can see that it has a status of OK, and that an action can happen to reset the password, because it has checked whether that user is inside of our database, and if it is OK, we can actually do an action. Now, what I can also do is try it with a fake email address at email.com. And this one is definitely not inside of our database right here. And if I now post the request, you will already see that a bad request error is popping up because it couldn't find an account associated with that email. So you can already see that it is working. Now the next step for this is that when we put in an email address that actually gets the status of OK, we want to send the user an email with a token and a link to the place where they can actually reset their password. Now we're going to be doing that from Django, and to do that we first need to create an email template. Now in this video we're going to be using BeFree, and I've already done a series on sending emails with this service before. It is a free way to get very nice looking email templates that we can use with our Django application, which make it look very professional with very little effort. And the only thing what you need to do is simply click on Get Started for free, and we can browse through different templates. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to click here on Get Started for free. And this is going to show us a lot of different templates that you can use for emails. But of course, I've already done a separate series on this, so more explanations can be found over there. Right now, we're going to go over to Automated, and in there they have a category for password reset. And this will provide us with 9 templates that we can use out of the box for creating password resets. Now you can pick any of these things that you like, but I'm going to go for this one because it's quite nice looking. So I'm going to go over and click on Edit, and this will provide us with a little bit more information on this template. So right now it has opened our template, and we are able to make changes to all different kind of things, but that is really not the objective of this video, because for now I just want to export this template, and then what we're going to do later is personalize it a little bit inside of our backend, so we can put in the email address of the user and also make sure that this reset my password button actually goes to the link that the user needs to go to. So all that I actually want to do right now is export it. And to do that, we're going to click on Export. Now you can see right here that we have a few options for doing that, and we can actually do this export 6 times every month completely for free. Now what I want to do is copy over the HTML and leave the images online, so we don't need to handle all of those things inside of our application, and we can simply click this right here and copy over the HTML code and simply put it inside of our code. So inside of our Django project right here, I'm going to create a new folder in our backend called templates. And it actually needs to be a folder. And in there, I'm going to create a new folder called backend. And inside of backend, I'm going to create a file called email.html. And in there, we paste the HTML code that we have just received from the BeFree interface. And this is going to make sure that when we send this to the user, they receive a beautiful looking email template with some small personalizations based on what we're going to do later. Now, there's one slight change that we need to make to our settings, because we actually need to tell the settings where they can find our templates. Because we are using our React.js frontend, and we actually have not used any Django templates so far. So we just need to make a very small change. So we're going to go over to our backend, to the auth folder, and then to our settings.py file. And we're going to scroll down until we see this templates thing right here. Now the only thing that we need to change is the directory in which they can find the templates, because that directory is actually in the highest level of our project and then in the backend folder. So what we're going to tell our dirs variable right here is that it is inside of base dir, and then slash, and then these apostrophes, and then we do templates like this. And this is going to tell them that for those templates, it needs to look in our base directory and then in the folder called templates. And now later on, we can tell our email that we want to use this template to send it to the users. So now it is time to actually start writing the logic for sending the email, because we have now the endpoint where we can put in the email address. We know that Django Rest PasswordReset is going to take care of identifying whether the user needs to receive a token or not, but now we need to actually send that. And if we look in the documentation for Django Rest PasswordReset, you can see that they already provide some code on how you can send those emails. And you can do that by using a receiver and create a function that is going to send an email after you've successfully passed in a request to that backend URL. So we are actually going to create something similar. It's going to be a little bit different, but this is going to enable us to send emails. Now inside of our code, we're actually going to write that logic in the users folder and then inside of the models.py file. Because in this case, it's not a view set, it is just a receiver and small function that we're going to write. So as almost always, we're going to start with a few imports that we will need. So the first one is from Django underscore rest underscore password reset dot signals. We are going to be importing reset underscore password underscore token underscore created. And this is going to be handling some of the password tokens for us out of the box. The next thing that we're going to import is from Django.dispatch. And we're going to be importing the receiver. And we're also going to do from Django.urls import reverse. And from Django.template.loader, we're going to be importing render to string. Then we also need some more things for doing the email. So we're going to do from Django.core.mail. We're going to be importing email multi-alternatives, which is going to enable us to send emails with attachments. And we also need from Django.utils.html. And we're going to be importing strip underscore tags. Now later on, I will explain to you what all of those things do. But first, let's start writing the code for sending those emails. Now, the first thing that we're going to write down on the bottom of this file is at receiver. And in there, we specify reset underscore password token created. Now, what this receiver does, it is going to check whether our database table for Django Rest PasswordReset has received a new entry. And every time a new entry is inside of this database, it is going to execute a function after it. So, for example, when we just made a request inside of this user interface for our backend, a new entry was actually created in our Django Rest PasswordReset underscore reset password token table. Because you can see right here that at this time, we have created a certain key from a certain IP address from a certain user, and it even has specified the agent from the user. Now, what this line of code is going to do, after a new request is being made and stored in the database, it is going to trigger everything that comes next. So in there, we're going to define a function that is going to send the user an email with all of the information that we need. So we're going to define that function as password underscore reset underscore token underscore created. And as a parameter, we are going to input reset underscore password underscore token, because that is something that we will actually need to be sending to the user. Now, the first thing that I'm going to define inside of here is the site link, because in the end, in the button of our email template, we want to send the user to the front end page where he or she can reset the password. So to do that, we're going to be constructing a link, which is a combination of our front end page URL, and then afterwards, we want to have the value of our token so that we can use that token to send a request back. So in this site link, I'm just going to start with the basic location of our front end, HTTP, and then a colon, and then // and then localhost, again a colon, and then 5173, like this. And then we're going to end it with a / as well. Now, the next thing that we want to add to our link is a token. And this token value is actually going to be equal to, again, two parentheses, and then a question mark with the word token. And then after the word token, we're going to specify an is sign and some open squarely brackets. And in these squarely brackets, we are going to pass in the token. Now, to do that, we can use .format. And in there, we can specify that we want to have the reset underscore password underscore token and then dot key. Now, what this does, it is going to take a look at the data that we are receiving and is going to take the key attribute from it. And if you take a look inside of our database, you can indeed see that we have a database column called key, which holds the value of the token that we need to send to the user. Now, after we have done this, we can construct our full link that we want to send to the user. Now, in here, I'm going to specify that I want to have the string of our site link, and I want to concatenate that with another string. And in this string, I'm just going to set password reset, because this is actually how we are going to construct our URL in the front end later on, but that will come in the next video. And then after that, we're going to specify the plus string, and we are going to pass in the token. And the token value is then what we will also retrieve from our URL to send back to the backend. Now, just to be sure to see what token comes out when we test it, I'm going to do print and then do full link, so we can see what is actually being printed. And I'm also going to print the token so that you can see what the results are going to be. So let's save this, put in the email address that is inside of our database, and then we can see what happens. And a small change, we actually need to add a few parameters more. We do a comma, and we also want to do a star and then args for arguments. And I also want to do double star and then specify keyword arguments, because otherwise we will not be able to get some of the information that we are going to be using. So let's see what happens if we now make a request again for email@email.com, which is inside of our database. We have now posted a new request and we get the status of OK. And we can now see that this function has run right here. And we can clearly see that the token has been formatted like this, and then the link has been formatted like this. So inside of here, you can see that it is going to navigate us to our front-end URL /passwordreset, and then has quite a long token. So that seems to be working just fine. Now, the next thing that we need to do is create our email. And we're going to start by creating something called context. And this is going to be a list of the variables that we want to enter inside of our email. Now, the first thing what we want to put inside of our email is the full link. So we're going to put that between some parentheses right here. And then we're going to say that this value is going to be equal to the variable full link. What I also would like to include is an email address, so the user actually knows that it is meant for the user. And in there, we can say that that is going to be equal to reset underscore password token. And then we can do .user.email. Now, what we can actually do is pass in these variables inside of our email quite easily. Because if I go inside of my template that we have created just now, you can see that the button right here is currently referring to example.com. So what I can do inside of my email is simply take this email address context variable that we have, go to our template of email.html, then we can look for the word example.com and find the one that is not commented out. And you can see right here that this is where the URL is being passed into the button. So what I can do is just replace this and say that we have two parentheses right here, and then specify that we want to have not the email address, but the full link inside of this href tag. And this is going to make sure that our button has the full link right here, and it's going to direct us to this particular location. Another thing that we want to pass in next to the full link is the email address, because it's nice if the user knows that it is meant for that particular user. So again, taking a look at our password, we see that we have some text right here, like we received a request to reset your password. And it might be nice that we start this with hi and then the email address. So we can go to email.html again, and we can look for the text, and the text was we received a request, and you can see that is taking place right here. So now we can start this with hi, and then do the double brackets like here, and then we simply put in the value for email address, and then we can do a comma and do it like this. So now it will start the email with hi and then the email address, and after that the message that we want to do. And of course you can add all different kinds of user information in these emails as well by simply looking up the user and getting some additional information. Okay, so we've now passed in some of the attributes inside of our email, but we still need to compose the entire thing that is going to send this email. So we're going to start with a variable called HTML message, like this. And in there we specify render to string, and then we can refer to what we actually want to render to a string. And in there we specify backend slash email.html. And like this, it is going to know that we want to render our email template inside of this thing. And this is actually going to make sure that it is readable for the people. And then what we can also do is pass in our context, and our context is going to be equal to context. And what this is going to do is going to make sure that these variables that we have right here, that this information is actually being passed to our template through these links in context right here. Now, the next thing what we want to do is also do plain message. And in there we specify strip underscore tags. And then we're going to do that for the HTML message. And these strip tags actually make sure that there are no HTML tags inside of our message, so it looks nice on the screen for the user. Now, the next thing we can do is actually compose our message. And the message is going to be equal to email multi-alternatives. And then we can open this up. And this one is actually going to make sure that we can send the emails using the nice looking template. And the first thing what we need to put in is the subject of the email. So then we can say request for resetting password for. And what we can then do is specify that we want to add a title in here like this. And after this, we can do the .format again and replace the word of title with the email address of our user. So we can do reset underscore password underscore token dot user dot email. And this is going to make sure that the email address is being passed into the title right here, so that it's a little bit more personalized inside of the subject. Next, we need to specify a body, and this is going to be equal to our plain message. We also need to specify a from email, and in there, for now, I'm just going to do sender at example.com. Doesn't really matter for me in this instance. And the last thing that we need to mention is the list of users we're going to send this to. Now, in this case, it's going to be the same as what we did before. It is going to be the email address of the person that has requested this. So we can specify that reset underscore password underscore token dot user dot email. And this is the message done. Now, after this, we can do message dot attach alternative. And this is going to be making sure that we can send it as an HTML message. And we also let it know by doing HTML message. And then we specify that this format is text/HTML. And as a last thing, we do message.send, which will actually send it to the user. And by doing this, the user should receive our email template in HTML. So it's going to look nice in there, whilst the message is actually going to be in text. And inside of our message is going to find our email template within there the link to the place where they can reset their password and also their email address. So let's check if this whole process actually works. So our backend server is now starting, and whilst I was away, I also added my own personal email to our database so I can check the email that is actually being sent. So to see if the email send logic is working, we're going to go to /API and then /passwordReset again. And I'm going to enter my email address and then check if I receive the email. And let's see what happens. All right, so we see that the status is okay, so that is still working fine. And when I go to my emails, I indeed see a request for resetting the password for my particular email address. And also in the email, my email address is specified. And when I take a look at the button, I can see on the bottom left that it is going to refer to password reset and then specifies the token. And in the next video, we're going to make sure that this link points towards our front end so that this button lands us in the front end, and then we can actually reset the password. And I also want to show you what we're going to do then. When we are in our front end, we need to send a request to another API that is being provided by Django Rest PasswordReset. And that one is the /API/password reset/confirm. So now we can try to reset our password by putting in the token that we have received in our database and providing a new password right here. And if we post this, we can see the response. And you can see that the status is okay and that the new password has been accepted. So now we are in our Django admin portal and we can test if we have actually successfully reset our password and can use our new password to log in here. So let's see if that is the case. Okay, and actually it took me quite some time to log into the admin portal, and I will show you in a minute, because we actually need to change one thing to make sure that our admin model is working with our custom user model. And that is that you need to set the authentication underscore backends inside of our settings.py file to django.contrib.auth.backends.model_backend. Because if you don't do this, you will not be able to log into your admin model, and you will probably think that your password reset logic is not working, but it is. So we are now inside of the login of our Django admin with the new setting in our settings.py file. And if I now enter my email address where we just changed the password for, and I put in my new password right here, you will see that we're being redirected to the admin portal now correctly, and we can also see all of the users inside of our application. So that seems to be working just fine. And that is actually all that we're going to be doing for this video. In this video, I showed you how you can enable password resets inside of our Django backend. And in the next video, we're going to continue and make sure that we have all of these pages prepared in our front end that can then send the APIs to our backend to reset the passwords from a nice looking user interface. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.